Morning, everybody. Nafta update. Final day. Today, we're going to find out today or tomorrow. There's going to be a press conference. Quebec election be damned. And so this time last week, it looked like Trudeau was just going to blow through this deadline, ignore it completely, and just carry on. But something changed, and I think what changed is this press conference. This press conference is what's referenced in the newspapers talking about this. So, well, here we go. We're 24 to 48 hours out from a decision on Nafta. Could even be 12 hours out if they announce it tonight. But this is what kicked things off. This is the 26th of September, and this is a question, or Trump answering a question on Canada.
President Susan Lee from Fox Business. Did you reject a one-on-one meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Yeah, I did.
Why?
Because his tariffs are too high and he doesn't seem to want to move, and I told him forget about it. And frankly, we're thinking about just taxing cars coming in from Canada. That's the mother lode. That's the big one. We're very unhappy with the negotiations and the negotiating style of Canada. We don't like their representative very much. They've taken advantage. I love Canada, by the way. I have so many friends. I have everybody and so many friends. But that has nothing to do with this. I'm representing the United States. Mexico was totally, I mean, they were great. By the way, the new president has been great. The deal is done. Now it has to go through Congress, and a lot of things have to happen. But we've done. Bob Lighthizer, who's here someplace. Where's Bob? Bob Lighthizer has done a great job of negotiating, as they have. But the deal is done. It's up to Congress. But Canada has treated us very badly. They've treated our farmers in Wisconsin and New York State and a lot of other states very badly.
Okay, I'm just going to leave him there because, man, he does like 5 full minutes on Canada just off the cuff. So good job, Mr. President. We understand your position. Unfortunately, our government doesn't understand your position. But it seems like this little tirade actually kicked some people off to realizing that he's not kidding. So here's a Financial Post archive link. The link will be in the description, the original link and the archive link. Quote, auto tariffs ultimatum by U.S. spooked Canada into returning to the last-ditch trade talks. Source. Now, I don't usually like to use unnamed sources, but at this point, they're all unnamed. So this could very well be fiction. Be aware, guys. But I'm reporting it because, well, it's interesting. And either there's movement or there isn't. We're going to find out in the short term. It's not like this is a long-term con. Trudeau's done as much damage as he can possibly do without actually just tanking the deal completely. The confidence in Canada is very low. Businesses are leaving for much more lucrative and attractive United States. Like, he's done a lot of damage this summer. I know people in the steel industry, and the aluminum industry, they're not happy about what's been going on and the uncertainty. And that's really, really problematic when you're trying to deal with trade. So, okay, back to the article here. So the U.S. and Mexico on Friday put off plans to release the text of the bilateral agreement they reached, opening the door for another push to include Canada. Okay, so Canada has unexpectedly agreed to last-ditch talks this weekend to join the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, with one source saying late Friday that Americans issued Ottawa an ultimatum: strike a deal by Sunday or face devastating tariffs on automobiles. So not only did Trump say it in the speech, Lighthizer said it as well. So, okay, here it is. Sometime in the last day or so, Lighthizer took a different stance, indicating that Sunday was the final deadline. If Canada was not part of the accord by then, it would face dire consequences, said a U.S. source in close contact with administration officials. The message was, quote, you're in or you're getting auto tariffs, said the person, who asked for anonymity to preserve ties with government officials. It was enough to spook Canada, said the source. Ottawa kind of went apocalyptic. So, yeah, like if you hear this from Mr. President Trump, and then it's backed up by the main negotiator, Rob Lighthizer, then yeah, there's panic. Like, NAFTA is not a small deal. NAFTA is one of the cornerstones of our modern economy, and without that, and I mean, Trump's willing to do it. Trump is absolutely willing to do it. So Ottawa took him seriously. Here's another report. I found this interesting. This is back to the 26th. New Trudeau's spokesperson suggests Trump was lying when he said he turned down a meeting with Trudeau. Quote, no meeting requested, Cameron Ahmed says. And Cameron Ahmed, I think, is one of the communication people for Mr. Trudeau. So that's crazy. But he did reach out to Mexico's president. Yeah. New York Times is reporting that Justin Trudeau reached out to Mexico's president to help save Nafta. So, I mean, that's important. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada made a last-ditch appeal to President-elect Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador this week of Mexico this week to help salvage a three-country North American free trade agreement, as the White House prepared to send Congress a bilateral trade deal with Mexico. So, yeah, they were absolutely willing to go ahead with just Mexico. Here it is from Mr. Obrador. He says, quote, "For the first time, there's real effort on both sides." He said, "In the next 48 hours, we will know whether we'll have a trilateral text or whether we will have to release the text of a bilateral understanding, which could then be adapted to incorporate Canada." But the incorporate Canada's extra language, the quote ends with release a text of a bilateral understanding. So Trudeau is reaching out to Mexico's president, pointedly not reaching out to Trump, even though Trump says he did reach out and a meeting was declined. So I believe Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump has pretty much been straightforward with everybody as far as I've been concerned, as far as I've seen. And so, Mr. Trudeau, the idea that you did not request a meeting with 4 or 5 days left in Nafta and you guys are in the same circles, it would be insane for you not to request a meeting. And it's even crazier to call the president a liar. But I mean, crazy or stupid. So, I mean, you make your choice, I suppose. Here's Bloomberg reporting U.S. and Canada are in a weekend dash for NAFTA agreement, Mexico's economy minister says. So that's not an unnamed source. That's we have actual people who would have knowledge of the negotiations confirming that negotiations are ongoing. So, hey, at least they're talking. At least they understand that this is a really big deal. Now, I thought this was interesting. We're going to listen to this gentleman here, and he's talking about, they're talking about specifically the auto tariffs. But he's going to say, no, Trump's blustering. I mean, he could do it, but he's blustering. So I just think it's so funny, the double speak coming out of our media. But anyway, here it is.
Getting close.
And what about the auto sector? Because we're hearing that term Carmageddon being referred to over and over again. Your thoughts on that with regards to tariffs being imposed on the auto sector? Is there some concessions that can be made there?
Well, this was a big blackmail threat by Donald Trump, right? You guys either come to a deal or we're going to hit you with these crippling auto tariffs. I mean, what kind of bad faith bargaining is that? And we heard him last week. We saw him snub our prime minister at the United Nations. We heard him call our chief negotiator, Chrystia Freeland, as being too difficult to negotiate with. This is just a tactic for backing Canada up against a wall. I mean, there is a chance he could still go through with it if we don't reach a deal. But I think most people see it as a typical Trump, negotiating tactic, the big scare tactic. And I'll
leave it there. So a big scare tactic is something that you're not likely to do, but you could do, I guess. And we're entering almost 14 months of negotiation in NAFTA, and I think his patience has run out because it's very clear Canada has been stalling, kicking the can down the road, absolutely not engaging in good faith negotiations, and doing everything we can to drag our feet. That's what it looks like publicly anyway. And Freeland doesn't help things by appearing at Taming the Tyrant conferences, etc. So when you say that most people understand that it's a Trumpian negotiating tactic, I just think that's false, sir. I think that at this point in time, his patience has worn out, and Canada needs to act instead of, doing whatever Trudeau and Freeland are doing, because what they're doing is not negotiating NAFTA until this weekend. Really, that's the truth. Up until right now, they've been platitudes because nobody's moved on anything. And so now we're moving. Now we're giving up now we're getting Chapter 19 in favor of milk. So we're giving up milk to get Chapter 19. But here's Abigail Biman, an Ottawa-based reporter. As the clock ticks towards Monday NAFTA deadline, Foreign Affairs Minister Keir Freeland today traded to today's UN speaking spot because it's important she be engaged on the NAFTA file during intensive periods of talks, says Canadian government official. But Freeland has no plans at this point to head to D.C. Okay, so what's happened here is yesterday Ms. Freeland was supposed to give a big speech at the UN, but canceled it, and it was like Canada's big speech, right? It was supposed to be like the headlining speech, and usually ministers don't deliver that. Well, secondary ministers don't deliver that speech. That's the PM's job. It's the country's leader's job. So strange that Freeland would be in that spot, but she was until yesterday when she canceled. She was supposed to push it till Monday, and now there's questions about whether it's actually going to be in Monday, but if at all. There's questions whether Canada is going to be speaking at all. So that's kind of interesting. All right, and so this is the last article I'll leave you with. It's a quote from the Globe and Mail, and Nafta latest, U.S. to bend on Chapter 19 in exchange for greater access to U.S. dairy, sources say. So I mentioned kind of briefly 2 seconds ago that we gave up on dairy to get Chapter 19. So this is just kind of filling that bit of the story out. So, quote, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is now heavily involved in last-ditch efforts to conclude a NAFTA deal, with sources saying the Trump administration is ready to concede to Canada's wish for Chapter 19 dispute settlement mechanism in exchange for greater access to U.S. dairy products. The talks that have been on frantic pace for the last 24 hours with Kushner, the son-in-law of President Trump, on the phone pushing for a deal before Sunday's deadline to start a 60-day countdown for a final revamped pact being signed by the end of November. Canada is prepared to allow U.S. dairy into Canada at rates that are higher than 3.2% under the 11-country TPP, sources say. Ottawa also made concessions on Section 7, which is part of the country's milk classification system that is used to set prices for skim, whole, and powdered protein concentrates milk. Canada also agreed to the same arrangements as Mexico to raise its duty-free limits to $100. According to a source, Canada's duty-free currently is set to $20. A senior Canadian official involved in the talks said there's no final written sign-off on Chapter 19 or dairy, but the insider said two sides are close to a deal, but stressed that Canada and the U.S. are not there yet. So we're not there yet. And this is the 29th. This was published. So this is yesterday. Who knows what has happened between then and now. But there seems to be actual movement, and I wanted to tell everybody what's going on. But until now, it's kind of seemed like half a story, and it still kind of seems like half a story. There's going to be an update. There's going to be an update really soon. So hopefully it all goes through, and we get a NAFTA that is beneficial for everybody, really. Like we get a USMC that is beneficial for everybody. But at this point in time, saying no deal to a bad deal, or whatever Trudeau's line has been, would be catastrophic for Canada. And I think everybody knows it. So at least the government is taking it seriously. At least that. Thanks for watching, everyone.